with that, I'll just do a quick intro. So welcome to Cones, our monthly California Naturalist online event series. My name's Ali Stefanchich. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Community of Practice Educator for UC Environmental Stewards. This series is created for UC California naturalists and climate stewards to connect across the state on topics including natural history, ecology, climate change, and the intersection of pressing human and environmental issues. If you'd like to see past Cones events, we'll be adding a link to the chat shortly where you can look those up. Thanks so much for coming today. We just have a few bits of housekeeping to go over. This is a Zoom meeting, not a webinar, so please remember to mute your mic and turn off your video during the presentation portion so we don't have to worry about background distractions. If you're having any technical issues, type them into the chat and we'll work with you to troubleshoot them. We'll have time for questions at the end of the presentation. You can add questions to the chat at any time. Just please start with the word question first so we can find them easily. And the last thing to note is that we are recording this presentation. It'll take me about a week to clean up the closed captioning and to post it onto our YouTube channel and onto our Cones Archive webpage, which we're sharing the link to the chat in shortly. Another thing that I'd like to start off by doing is just by acknowledging that this virtual presentation is taking place throughout the unceded territory of California, home to nearly 200 tribal nations. I'm speaking to you from Nisenan land in what's now Nevada City. We acknowledge and honor the original inhabitants of our various regions, and we encourage you to learn which tribal nations are indigenous to the area where you are now living. We'll add a link to the chat shortly with more information where you can learn more about your local tribes. And so now I'd just like to introduce our speakers today. We have two folks from Bat Conservation International. First, Jessie serves as the Conservation and Research Coordinator for the PacWest region, facilitating and supporting bat-related research, management, and policy efforts in California and Nevada. Her research and conservation of a diversity of organisms, including bats, small mammals, shorebirds, seabirds, songbirds, reptiles, cetaceans, and numerous plant species, have inspired a holistic ecological approach to conservation and a commitment to public education and engagement. She has a BS in Ecology and Evolutionary Biology from UC Santa Cruz and a master's in biology from Boise State University. And we also have Erin, who joined the staff at Bat Conservation International in 2019 and is proud to be doing community engagement work on behalf of the organization. Erin majored in wildlife conservation and entomology at the University of Delaware and has a master's in wildlife ecology from Caesar Kleberg Wildlife Research Institute at Texas A&M University, Kingsville. She has over 10 years of experience working as a wildlife biologist and running environmentally focused volunteer outreach and education programs. Erin is happiest working at the intersection of science, communication, and citizen empowerment. So now, without further ado, I will turn it over to Jessie and Erin to help you learn a bit more about bats today.
Okay, thank you so much, Ali. Thanks for the intro. Thanks for having us at Cones. We're really excited to be here. We're so excited to talk about bats. It's our favorite subject. I'm going to start the presentation, and Jessie and I are going to kind of hand off different sections, and then hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the end. But yeah, all right, let's go. So as Ali mentioned, we are with Bat Conservation International. If you haven't heard of us, we are a global nonprofit, And our whole issue and mission is to really end bat extinctions worldwide, which is a huge kind of call to action. Bats are on every single continent except for Antarctica, and we have a lot of work cut out for us, but we're very, very passionate. We've been around for over 40 years now. We started very locally in Austin, Texas, where I am located. And it's also Jessie is virtually located currently because of the picture behind her, is a very famous bridge in Austin. But yeah, BCI, since the 80s, we've really grown. We have about 70 full-time employees working all over the United States as well as in different countries. And we really kind of are focused on meaningful conservation solutions. We have a whole research team that's kind of focused on that. And we also really feel it's important to kind of connect bats and people and kind of just teach people about bats, why they're important, and why bat conservation is something that you should get excited about and hopefully want to support. So I like to start off with some bat basics, just in case you don't know that much about bats. Kind of wanted to start at the beginning. And there's a lot of kind of myths out there about bats. These are probably things you have heard, and I'll kind of go over each one of these. This slide looks a little bit nuts, but I'll explain it. The first one is this guy right down here in the corner, the bat with the glasses. This idea that bats are blind, or sort of that phrase, blind as a bat. I hear people say that all the time. And I think, people assume that bats can't see very well because they use echolocation or sound to get around. And that's how they hunt and kind of navigate at night. But bats can actually see as well as we can. They can actually see fairly well. So that is not true. Bats can, and actually certain bats can see better than us in low light conditions. So bats' eyes work quite well. They just also have this amazing superpower of navigating through sound. Another one is kind of bats are rats with wings. Don't worry, this is not a real animal. This is from the internet. And I think this comes from bats and rats and mice, sort of on first glance look similar. They're both kind of fuzzy and small, but they're actually not that closely related in terms of kind of DNA. So a study came out a couple of years ago that actually found that bats are more taxonomically closely related to horses than rats and mice, which I know doesn't make sense when you look at them. It kind of blew my mind, but that is kind of what we figured out. And honestly, they're in different orders. So rats and mice are rodents, and bats are in their own order, which is called Chiroptera, which I'll talk more about in a second. But kind of one of the main differences between bats and rats and mice is that, rats and mice, if you have one rat in your shed, you're going to have, 20 rats in your shed very quickly. They reproduce quite fast. But bats usually only give birth to one pup per year, and that's it. So for their body size, they reproduce very, very slowly. And that's kind of an important difference between the two. Another myth that's out there is like bats want to get in your hair or bats will fly into your hair. This is definitely not true, but it's something that's still out there in the world. Bats are so good at navigating with sound, they can actually sense something as thin as one human hair when they're echolocating. And I'm holding one up, you can't even see it. So they're really good at avoiding us. And they roost in caves, they roost in bridges, they roost in trees, but they do not roost in human hair. So, and all of our bats pretty much in the US, except for a few, eat insects. So they're interested in kind of catching those bugs. They're not interested in people. And then we have a couple of nectar bats that are found kind of in the desert Southwest, but generally most of our bats are eating insects. Another one is kind of bats and rabies are always kind of mentioned together. And rabies is very scary. If you think you've been exposed, you definitely want to seek medical attention right away. But bats, kind of any mammal can have rabies. Bats don't have rabies more than any other species of mammal. About less than 1% of wild bats generally have rabies, so it's not that common kind of within all the bats that we have kind of flying around. I looked in California, you're much more likely to get rabies from a skunk than you are from a bat. So, it's just important to sort of use common sense if you encounter, any wild animal. I will say, if you found a bat on the ground and you're not sure what to do, and you want to call a wildlife rehabilitator, this website, batworld.org, they have an amazing search. You can just type in your zip code and it'll tell you kind of what the bat rehabilitators around you are, and you can contact them. They'll tell you what to do. Try not to pick it up. If you do need to move it, try to use it with a box. Try not to touch the bat. If you do, for some reason, need to touch the bat, make sure you're wearing really thick leather gloves because they can bite, because they're very scared. And with bats and rabies, it's really more of a sampling bias. There's millions of healthy bats flying around all the time that we don't interact with. But, if someone does find a bat during the day on the ground, that's potentially a sick bat. So that's sort of where that misconception comes from. The last one is that, bats are vampire bats, or people are worried that all bats that we have are vampire bats, that they're going to attack people, they're going to suck your blood. And, this comes from movies and TV. I always say vampire bats have the best PR people because they're just like featured in everything. If there's bats on TV, it's usually like Dracula or kind of something spooky. But there's over 1,400 species of bats in the world. Of those 1,400, only three actually feed on the blood of animals. And of those three, only one truly feeds on the blood of just mammals. So really one out of over 1,400 species of bats is actually considered like a true vampire bat. And they are found kind of south of the US, Mexico south. So we don't have them here in the United States at all. Again, they're just kind of overrepresented in media. So those are kind of the common bat myths. Now you can kind of tell your friends if they say one of these, you can tell them why it's not true. You're now the bat experts. Go out there and spread good information. But yeah, so bats are mammals. They're very similar to us, honestly. They have kind of, you'll see this picture, the bones we have in our arms and hands are the same bones that bats have in their wings. So their wings are actually just their fingers are sort of elongated with skin in between them, and that's how they fly. So if you've seen a bat fly in the wild, you'll notice, they're really maneuverable. And that's because if you look at your wrists and your hands, you have all this flexibility. So they're able to use that to navigate really, really well. And as I said, they're in the order Chiroptera, which literally means hand wing. And you can understand where that name comes from, when you look at the wings of a bat and see that it really is just their hands. So I always say, I tell kids to do jazz hands, and then you can fly like a bat. So feel free to do that now. I know it's virtual, but if you feel like doing it, go for it. Okay, so bats are super important for a couple of different reasons. As I said, most of the bats in the United States eat insects, and most of the bats in California eat insects as well. And they are doing us an amazing service with pest control. A study came out a couple of years ago that found that bats actually save farmers in the United States billions of dollars annually just by eating kind of all these different crop pests that really will impact the crop yield. A study also found recently that came out that in areas where there's been kind of a rapid or a large kind of bat population decline in the United States, farmers are using more pesticides on their crops to kind of make up for that loss. And they've linked that increased pesticide use to increased infant mortality in those areas. So they've actually been able to connect those dots, which is quite dramatic. And it just shows you how important bats are to kind of our health and to people. So I have a cool video to sort of show you how bats echolocate. Again, they're using sound. The sound is higher pitched than we can actually hear with our ears. It's a higher frequency. So you're not gonna be able to hear in this video, but you'll see there's a spider right here. The bat's gonna come in, kind of change his path, and then go after that spider. They sort of use their tail as a scoop. I'll play it one more time because it's cool. So, and this spider is obviously not moving. So our bats are capturing things that are flying. So think about this is quite an easy prey for a bat. They're usually capturing things that are much more, moving quickly, moving around. This next video is a little harder to see. Bats are notoriously difficult to photograph and videotape because they are hunting at night. In the middle here, you're gonna see a moth, and then the bat's gonna fly in, sort of do this acrobatic flip and grab the moth and keep going. So there's our moth just flying around. Here comes the bat. So they basically use their tail as a scoop. They gobble up that bat and then they keep going. And they're eating lots and lots of insects every single night. A pregnant mama bat will actually eat her body weight in insects every single night when she's pregnant, which is just an astounding number of insects. Bats are also really important pollinators too. As I mentioned, we do have a couple of species of pollinating bats in the United States. They're mainly found kind of in the desert Southwest. They're known to pollinate certain cacti flowers. They also are really important pollinators, one of the main pollinators of the agave plant. So if you do like tequila, if you like margaritas, make sure you know that that is because of a bat. So just cheers to the bat next time you have a margarita. So that's an important thing. Bats also pollinate a lot of the wild types of many of the fruits that we kind of enjoy in our diets. And they pollinate about 500 different species of plants kind of in the world. Plants that are both ecologically and economically very, very important. So they're very good pollinators, and they're also quite efficient pollinators. So I have one more video for you. This is in a lab, clearly. This beaker, imagine it's a flower, and there's nectar at the bottom. You're going to see our nectar bat coming in, checking this out. And then he's going to go in there and you'll see his tongue come out. And it's just like a kid with a juice box, basically, just slurping up all that nectar. And see how far that bat is in that tube? Like they are covered in pollen when they're doing this. You know, when they're drinking the nectar, they get covered with pollen and they move massive amount of pollen from plants to plants. So they're really, again, very efficient pollinators. Another reason bats are important is they're really amazing at seed dispersal. So there's a lot of fruit eating bats. We don't have any in the United States, but in other parts of the world, bats eat a lot of fruit. You know, they eat the seeds as well when they're eating the fruit. The seeds don't necessarily get digested, so they come out in the guano, which is just a fancy word for bat poop. So in areas like this is kind of a clear-cut section of the rainforest. You know, a lot of animals won't cross this. It's quite, you know, it looks quite dangerous, quite exposed. But fruit bats, they fly back and forth all night. You know, they don't really care. They're dropping guano as they go. In that guano is a bunch of little seeds, and guano is an amazing fertilizer. You know, it's a really ideal conditions for seeds to grow. So about 95% of new growth in the rainforest is actually due to fruit bats. So they're so important for forest regeneration kind of in these specific areas. So fruit bats, you know, they move and kind of distribute massive amount of different plants kind of around and are really important for kind of maintaining the diversity of our more tropical regions of the world. Okay, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jessie to talk about your bats.
Thank you, Erin. So yeah, we've got 25 species of bats in California. Next slide, please. And I'm going to highlight just a few of them for you today. So the first one I want to talk about is the pallid bat. You can see its distribution here in pink. So it's throughout the Western US. And this bat has kind of a different feeding strategy. It will actually take things like scorpions or centipedes or beetles off the ground. And so you see it has really large ears, and that is so that they can hear those prey movement sounds as the animals are moving around. Our chief scientist, Dr. Winifred Frick, also did a lot of research with pallid bats and discovered that they are pollinators of some of the cactus plants. So just what Erin was describing, she discovered that they are also filling that kind of ecological role. And very exciting for the pallid bat, we just had them identified as the California state bat. So last year, Senate Bill 732 passed. It was spearheaded by a 12-year-old named Naomi D'Alessio, and just very exciting to have the species represent bats for the state. Awesome. Thanks. Next slide. So the next bat is the California bat, or Myotis californicus. And this species is the most abundant bat species in desert scrub habitats. They're also found in oak woodland and ponderosa pine, and they often will roost beneath loose bark of trees. So finding crevices and bark that's peeling off. They're also comfortable roosting in buildings and bridges and cliff faces. Next, we have the Mexican free-tailed bat, also known as Brazilian free-tailed bat. And you can see they have a huge range. This bat will form really large colonies. So where I'm standing right now virtually is the Congress Avenue Bridge in Austin. It's one of the biggest, is a big colony in an urban space. And then Bracken Cave, which BCI owns and operates, is the largest aggregation of flying mammals. And this species is present at that cave. So in California, we have our own kind of special bridge where you can see these animals coming out. This is at the Yolo Basin, the overpass there outside of Sacramento. So if you are interested in checking out bats emerging at night, yolobasin.org will do wonderful programs and tours. In the Sacramento area, they'll also do events at schools. So if you're interested in that, please get in touch with them. And some fun facts about the Mexican free-tailed bat: they are incredibly fast flyers. So they can fly on average 60 miles per hour, and they can fly a maximum of 100 miles per hour. So these animals are just phenomenal at moving through space. And they are, as Erin talked about before, really important for controlling insect pest populations. So a fun thing that I discovered, so when you have these animals in hand, they're actually so sweet and like gentle, and they have a very specific smell. And I discovered that that smell, which is kind of like corn chips, is because they will eat the corn borer moth. And so they are, eating those moths that are predating on corn, again, offering that really valuable ecological service of reducing pests in our agricultural spaces. So the next species I want to talk about briefly is the western yellow bat. We actually do not know very much about this species. You can see that it has a fairly limited range and just enters Southern California, but it's pretty neat because they will roost in palm trees. So they're one of the few species where we see that occurring regularly. So if you have palm trees in your community, keep an eye on those at dusk, and if you see bats leaving, there's a fairly good chance that it's a western yellow bat. This next bat, Townsend's big-eared bat, is a very sensitive species. You can see that it has these kind of disparate populations in the Ozarks and mid-Appalachia, and those are actually subspecies that are currently endangered, have an endangered status. This group will often be found in roosting in some of the abandoned mines throughout California. So that's some habitat that was opened up to this species. And they also occur in caves. So a great example is the Bear Gulch Cave at Pinnacles National Park. And if you're interested in learning more about this species and have access to Pinnacles National Park, that's a great place to learn more about them in situ. And then the final species I wanted to mention is the Yuma bat, Myotis yumanensis. So this species typically forages near slow-moving water or vegetation near water. It's often found in man-made environments. So this summer, I actually piloted a new community science program where we had community participants put recorders out on the landscape, and they detected the echolocation calls of a variety of species, but the most common were Yuma bat, California bat, and Brazilian free-tailed bat. So that's a great indication that these three species are adapted to living in urban and suburban environments. They can often use overpasses, bridges, buildings for roosts. So it's just great to imagine and to understand how connected we are to our ecology, even in urban environments. So now I want to briefly review some of the major threats that bats face. So in the US, a big one is white nose syndrome. We also have conflicts with wind energy infrastructure, climate change, and then the last one I want to talk about is habitat loss. So again, these are the threats facing the bats in North America. And unfortunately, we have discovered, we did a census last year called the State of the Bats Report, and we found that 53% of North American bat species have a moderate to very high risk of extinction in the next 15 years. So this is pretty striking. 15 years is not a long time. After I talk through these threats, you'll maybe have a better appreciation for the pressures that these species are under. And this is why it's so critical that we all work together for bat conservation, because we do all have a part to play. So first, I'd like to introduce you to white nose syndrome. This is a disease caused by a fungal pathogen that originated in Europe. There, the disease evolved with the bats. So they have a certain level of immunity, but the bats here were novel to it. So when it arrived, it's really impacting bat populations here. So the way it works is it causes hibernating bats of some species to wake up during hibernation, and in doing so, burn critical fat reserves. The bat will wake up, groom the fungus off, go back into hibernation. The fungus continues to grow and they wake up again. So they burn these reserves and eventually deplete them. So they wake up and they're starving, and it's in the middle of the winter, so there isn't food for them to eat. So unfortunately, this has resulted in a 90% reduction in populations of little brown bats, northern long-eared bats, and tricolored bats in those caves where white nose has come through. So this has actually resulted in northern long-eared bats being listed as threatened in 2015 and uplisted as endangered in 2022. And tricolored bats are currently being listed as endangered in Canada and are being proposed for endangered status here. So this map is showing that the X shows the origination of the fungal pathogen in the US. And then it has just spread across the country over time. And we can see that unfortunately in California, we do have several counties reporting presence of the fungus. We have not yet seen the disease being presented. So we are right on that cusp where in the next few years, we'll start seeing bats with the disease. The landscape in California and the West in general is very different. So in the East, there are these big hibernacula where lots and lots of animals will aggregate. And in the West, we don't have as many of those. So we're going to be learning a lot about how the disease spreads in that different kind of distribution of animals. So conservation around this topic, we as a community of researchers have done a lot of work on looking at vaccines, probiotics, sterilizing caves, ways to improve the body conditions of bats going into hibernation. And, there's a lot of movement in great directions on all these fronts, but a challenge comes with scaling that up and applying those conservation strategies to a really big and diverse landscape. So we don't have kind of a silver bullet for this. Another thing that was born out of this or another kind of important component of conservation around white nose is monitoring. So there are several groups, including the Park Service and California Department of Fish and Wildlife in California that are swabbing bats as they come out of hibernation so that we can get an idea of when that fungus shows up. And that's why we have the data about which counties are showing the presence of the fungal spores. But this kind of emergency also really brought the bat community together in the development of a program called the North American Bat Monitoring Program. So this is across the continent. It involves many different agencies, and anybody can contribute data to this program. So the community science work that we did this summer, those data went into this database. And essentially what this established was a set of standard data collection protocols so that data could be compared across time and space. Because before we had researchers doing a little bit of study here or a project there, but there wasn't a way to knit it all together. So that's the power of the NA-BAT program. It can bring all those data together and it can allow us to do species population trends so that we have an understanding of what these threats are doing to the population on the landscape scale. And it's really valuable that for California, we have some baseline data before now white nose is going to be affecting populations. So some things that you can do on this front is to not touch bats, to stay out of sites where they're hibernating. If you are a spelunker, to follow all of the latest decontamination protocols so you're not moving the fungus from one place to another. And then if you do come across an animal, to not touch it. Again, you can reach out to your local wildlife agency if you have any concerns or if you need somebody to address an animal that's in your space. But again, we just really want to limit any potential for moving these fungal spores around. So the next topic I'd like to talk about is wind energy infrastructure. So I first want to recognize that it's really important that we're addressing climate change issues, and having renewable energy like wind is a vital part of that. So what I'm going to describe is just what is going on in terms of conflicts between these wind turbines and bats, and trying to find a solution that minimizes those. So wind energy affects bats that roost in trees and travel long distances. So whereas white nose really impacted hibernating species, this is a different group of species that are interacting with wind turbines. And we used to say that the bats migrate, but we're discovering more and more that they're actually just moving really long distances in different directions. So far, we haven't really nailed down a pattern to that. And because they're moving these long distances, there's an increased chance for them to interact with wind turbines. So it's currently estimated that hundreds of thousands up to 1 million bats are killed annually in North America from collisions with wind turbine blades, which is just not sustainable for these populations. Conservation actions on this front. So a lot of research has shown that if turbines are turned off when they're very low wind speeds, that can dramatically reduce fatalities because that's when bats are most active in these areas. And it also has a really minimal impact on energy production. So it's great that we've kind of identified that solution, but it's having that solution be implemented across the board that is really going to get us to reducing bat mortality. We're also still studying bat distribution and activity patterns so that we can inform where this infrastructure should be placed as it's developed in the future. So for example, I'm part of a study that's a consortium of researchers, BCI is just one of them. We're looking at bat activity in the offshore wind environment and coastal environment because those areas are slated for wind development. And we just need to have an understanding of what kind of activity is out there and what the risk could be for these populations. So other approaches are to develop tools to better understand if these spaces are attracting bats. For example, a lot of times insects might be attracted to these structures, and that could be a draw for bats. And then also developing deterrents and evaluating the efficacy of those. So for example, there's some ideas about creating sounds that would alert the bats or deter the bats from being in that area. Again, that's kind of at the vanguard of research right now. So something that you can do is if you're getting some of your energy from wind sources, asking the companies about their commitments to bat conservation. So again, we do have some tools in our toolbox for addressing this issue. It's really getting those implemented where we can actually see some results of minimizing impact on bats. So next, I want to touch on climate change. I think we're all probably fairly familiar with what's going on, but just talking about California in general, we're seeing average temperatures across the state that have gone up by 1 degree Fahrenheit and some regions that have gone up by 2 degrees. And we're also seeing the projections of increased drought severity and increased numbers of dry years. So these, and this is just a small part of what climate change is projected to do for California, but these have a dramatic impact on habitat for bats. So some ways that we are addressing this is BCI is in their restoration work, actually prioritizing creating water resources for bats so that, and again, that will function for all wildlife. But again, this is a critical kind of pinch point for habitats remaining useful to bats. So this is something that you can do as well. And we'll talk about this a little bit later. And then of course, just in general, reducing our carbon footprints and supporting strong climate protection policies is really valuable for addressing this kind of massive problem. Finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about habitat loss. So in the state of California, the entire land area, over 9% is currently being used for agriculture or croplands, about 31% for pasture and range, 16% for forest use, timber use, 5% for special use like rural transportation, defense, and industrial uses, and then about 5.5% for urban areas. So we have dramatically changed the landscapes in California, but these changes don't have to mean necessarily a loss of habitat. So being mindful in how we both work in ecosystems and make efforts to maintain their functioning. So still providing habitat or water resources, having agricultural in a way where bats can continue their role of removing pests from the landscape and providing that ecological service. So it's just really important that we remember that we are, again, part of a functioning ecosystem, and to, again, honor the really important components, or each of the very important components of that ecosystem, including bats. So as Erin mentioned earlier, that study of, bats being removed from an area, causing an increase in pesticide use and that having impacts on human health. So some ways that we are conserving, or some conservation actions for habitat loss, is both to protect habitat and restore it. And this is where, for you, you can have a major impact. So I'm going to hand it over back to Erin, and she's going to talk about how you can help with habitat, improving habitat and restoring it.
Okay, thanks, Jessie. Hopefully the moving the slides along was okay. That was awesome. Thanks for all that info. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what y'all can do to kind of help bats in your own backyard or in your own space. And really, it's this idea of a bat garden. Um, so in the United States, we have a lot of lawn. This estimate was from 2015, where it said lawns cover an estimated 40 million acres in the US. Sure, that's gone up since now. And this kind of blew my mind. I found out that the #1 irrigated crop in America is grass, which is just wild because we don't eat grass. So you'd think, we were a nation of goats with the amount of goat food that we're basically growing. But, people really want to have kind of this look, even if you're in places where you really don't have a lot of water, people still try so hard to have this green lawn. And, these urban spaces and suburban spaces where you have kind of just grass, maybe there's one or two trees, maybe some plants, but a lot of it's not native species. And then it's really not really much use for wildlife, for birds, for insects, and bats included, because all of our bats, or sorry, most of our bats eat insects. And really that's sort of the secret sauce to kind of supporting our bats is through native plants, because the native plants are going to support the insects that our bats are eating. And in this case, we're really thinking about kind of what we decided to call nighttime pollinators. So, our moths and our beetles and kind of certain species of flies. And so for gardening for bats, it's really sort of a two-pronged approach where you want to have, native plants that support the food that bats are eating, but also you want to provide roosting habitat as well, because we do have certain species of bats that roost in trees, that roost in dead trees. Jessie mentioned some that roost under bark. So there's a lot of kind of important things that bats use trees for. So you really want to think about the herbaceous things as well as the woody. This is a sign we hopefully will have available on our website at some time soon. You can buy this once you have a back garden and kind of display it, the envy of all your neighbors, hopefully. But when you're thinking about providing food for bats, again, thinking about nighttime pollinators, so like what attracts insects at night? Things that are very fragrant, things that have fruit on them, plants that bloom at night. So a lot of our native plants, leave their flowers open all the time. Certain ones will close their flowers like right at dusk. Some plants open their flowers kind of right at night, but a lot of them just leave them open all the time. And that's really great for daytime pollinators as well as nighttime pollinators. Things that are lighter colored, so yellow and pink and kind of white flowers really pop at night. And then you can also get really in the weeds about kind of moth host plants, which is really fun. If you're interested in insects or you're interested in butterflies, specifically, moths are just so fascinating. And I feel like butterflies are cool, but moths are kind of amazing. I might be a little biased, but there's just so much more diversity and they have the most interesting looking caterpillars. You can really support a lot of moth diversity in your yard by just thinking about these host plants. And then also, as we mentioned, bats are friends to farmers. They're also friends to gardeners as well. So if you have a garden in your yard and it's an organic garden, a lot of those things you sort of consider garden pests really become delicious bat food. So I have some examples of that. These are some of the things you may find in your garden, but they grow up and then bats absolutely love to eat these things. They eat a lot of crop pests, they eat a lot of garden pests too. And then I always include this one because everybody hates these guys. If you've ever tried to grow tomatoes, you may have encountered one of these, the tobacco hornworm and the tomato hornworm. Two different species do the same thing. But they grow up to become this delicious Carolina Sphinx moth, which really I would think of as kind of like a bat cheeseburger just flying around, like really delicious food. So I had a couple of just ideas of plants, but again, this is sort of just like a jumping off point. I know y'all are from kind of different parts of California. Different plants work better in different situations, but we have a really exciting resource we're going to share with you in a minute that'll hopefully help you kind of narrow down kind of what plants might be good for your back garden. But these are just some of my favorites. Goldenrod is absolutely amazing. If you look at goldenrod during the day, and it's very much a fall bloomer, which is fantastic for, for migrating monarchs, for a lot of insects that are kind of getting ready for winter. But if you look at goldenrod during the day, it is covered in pollinators. So there's all these kind of native bees and other things visiting the goldenrod, and the same is very true at night as well. So it's a really kind of busy plant, has a lot going on, and it's a great supporter of a lot of our native insects. The same is true for common yarrow as well. That one grows really well in a lot of different situations. And it's also a really great plant for attracting nighttime pollinators. Here's a couple other ones. I was just going through lots of different plants in California when I was coming up with this list. Really jealous with the amount of beautiful and plants y'all have access to and kind of all the diversity. But these two are great examples. Ceanothus, there's like a ton of different species of those kind of throughout the state. So you really can't go wrong with those. They support a lot of different species of moss, as well as the bugler as well. Like the scarlet one is just beautiful. And kind of penstemons is in general, kind of that genus penstemon is a really kind of great one for kind of a back garden as well. And then lupines, same thing. There's a lot of different lupine species. They support a lot of different insects as well as sunflowers. And then the 4 o'clocks, that's one that kind of opens its flowers later in the day. So that's a good example of kind of what I was talking about there. But again, this is just a very preliminary list. You probably have a lot of things in your yard already if you're thinking about native plants that are really great for bats too. These are just other examples. So a lot of kind of fruit or berry things, these are great to attract insects. You also get lots of birds too, because birds absolutely love to eat your berries. But you'll get lots of things that, our bats are eating. So it's a really great kind of support for our local bats too. And then thinking about trees, I always talk about this book. I absolutely love it. You probably, if you've heard of Doug Tallamy, if you haven't, highly recommend checking him out. He is kind of a native plant guru. He's written a lot of books about kind of how you can make your yard really a kind of a haven or a sanctuary for wildlife. He also has a program called Homegrown National Park, which is just kind of encouraging people all over the U.S. to make their yard kind of a native space, a natural space for wildlife. But he talks about oak trees in this book, and it's really about just oaks support so many different things. There's just so many wildlife species dependent on oaks, and they're really kind of this ecosystem unto themselves. And in California, there's lots of amazing oak trees to choose from, and kind of no genus of plant supports more moss species than Quercus, which is the genus for oaks. So, if you have trees in your yard, they're great for roosting habitat because, bats kind of need that structure to roost, kind of depending on the bat. But trees also support a lot of insects as well. So it's really kind of two things at once here. Just other examples of great trees for roosting habitat that also support insects, the maple trees, the elderberries, like these are all great examples. They have kind of flowers on them or the kind of fruit or other things like that that really attract insects. Sometimes they're host plants for different species as well. And this is kind of a great way to kind of support bats in your yard. And I did want to show you one bat we didn't mention, but there's the western red bat, which is found in California. These are solitary tree roosting bats. So you could have one in your yard, you'd never know it. They basically just roost by themselves, unless it's a mama and she has pups, but not this time of year. But they hold on by one foot. They curl up. This is a picture of one here. So you can see its wings are kind of curled up. Its tail is kind of right here. And just during the day, they look like a dead leaf and they really just hang in the tree and they hide in the foliage. So they're pretty common, but they're just not very commonly seen by people during the day in trees. So, it just shows you how kind of roosting habitat and providing trees is really important to certain species of bats. And then kind of along that line, I wanted to kind of say dead trees are so important. If you can leave a dead tree up and it's not a safety hazard, that's fantastic. As Jessie mentioned, some bats will kind of roost under bark, whether it's a live tree or a dying tree or a dead tree. Sometimes there's kind of those little pockets where bats can get into. You know, if a tree is kind of rotted out in the center, that might be a great kind of bat roost right there. So dead trees are really, really important for certain species of bats. And then this idea of vertical layers where, you know, even if you have kind of a small space, if you think vertically instead of horizontally, you can really support a lot of diversity. So, you know, thinking about ground cover versus kind of smaller shrubs, smaller trees, larger trees, just kind of different layers of canopy, having something different. You're going to support a lot of different insects within all this different habitat. And in turn, that's going to support kind of other wildlife, which includes bats. So we do have a guide to gardening for bats, which is really exciting. Please check this out. It's on our website. And it really just kind of talks about a lot of the things that I've just mentioned sort of briefly, but it goes into it in a little more detail. And highly recommend if you're interested in gardening for bats, this is a really good place to start. And then Jessie and I are so excited because we are working with CalScape, which is with the California Native Plant Society, where they have this amazing native plant database on their website with so much information, and they're actually adding kind of a bat filter to this. You can search for plants that would be great for a bat garden. This should be pretty much up and running, we think, by the end of today, which is so exciting. So there's going to be kind of different resources on this website about bats. And I don't know, Jessie, if you wanted to add anything about this or anything like that.
No, just, yeah, keep your eye on it. It's a great way to help you
We're so
plan
excited.
your garden for bats. Yeah, and it's gonna help tailor because, as we mentioned, there's so much diversity in California. So this will be a great tool for finding like what really works for your ecoregion.
Yeah, because you want to try to make it as native to your ecoregion as possible, because they're going to be the most successful plants and they're going to support kind of the most insects as well. Other just general yard tips, you know, keep your yard as organic as possible. I know people don't like mosquitoes. They often kind of want to spray for just mosquitoes, but unfortunately there's no kind of one thing that just kills mosquitoes and nothing else. So if you do spray, you're killing the bad bugs as well as the good bugs. And, you know, I think the best thing to do really is just kind of have a lot of diversity of plants. You can support a lot of insects. You know, you'll get the good insects that are eating kind of mosquitoes as well, like dragonflies and spiders, but bats will also eat some mosquitoes too. So just kind of keeping your yard organic, that really hopefully will support kind of a healthier ecosystem with fewer mosquitoes. You know, and then keep your cat inside, especially at night. You know, I'll let a bird person kind of yell at you about why you should keep your cat inside during the day, because they do eat a lot of birds, absolutely. But they will also eat bats as well. If they catch a bat, you know, cats will kind of do their thing. And it's also better and safer for your cat to have them inside kind of at night. And then, you know, a lot of us live in kind of very busy, very bright urban and suburban areas where there's a ton of light pollution. There's so many studies out there showing that light pollution is bad for wildlife and for people in lots of different ways. But, you know, we found with bats, I think, you know, a lot of light and a lot of noise that can really kind of all that feedback makes it a little more challenging for them to echolocate. So kind of if you can keep your yard as dark as possible, as dark as you feel comfortable with, you know, you'll have a lot more insects because, you know, light pollution is quite harmful to insects as well. But it also might be this nice little oasis kind of in this sea of lights to have sort of this dark space where the bats can come and visit and hopefully eat lots of the insects too. And then if you want to have water for bats, unfortunately, it's not as easy as kind of water for birds. They don't perch and drink. They actually drink on the wing. So that means they swoop down and open their mouths and kind of scoop up water, which is very impressive. They're very coordinated that way. But they need about 7 to 10 feet of water generally to drink. That's sort of kind of general recommendation. Smaller bats might not need as much water, but that's sort of, you know, what we generally say. You know, you can have a pond, you can have sort of a water trough. They will drink out of pools. You know, I don't think that pool water is very good for them, but in areas of drought, you know, bats will absolutely visit pools and drink out of them. But just make sure, you know, the water is unobstructed. And if you have any sort of water source for wildlife in your yard, make sure you have a wildlife escape ramp as part of that. You know, bats actually can swim. It looks super weird, but they can do it. You know, if they do fall into water, they kind of will sort of hug the side of whatever they're in and sort of look for a way out. That's true with lots of other wildlife too. So you can buy a pretty cheap escape ramp that just goes into your pond or your pool or your water trough, and having that is a really great way to kind of ensure that, you know, if something falls in, they can get out. And we did want to mention that Bat Week is coming up. it's the most wonderful time of the year, I would say. I feel like Jessie would agree. But yeah, so Bat Week is a really fun celebration of kind of the importance and amazingness of bats. We sort of take the momentum surrounding bats and Halloween and kind of turn it into more of an educational event. If you go to batweek.org, there's a ton of activities and events and kind of information where you can just check out, learn more about bats. There's a lot of different partners involved. We have partners in Canada, the US, and Mexico now. So it's kind of getting bigger every year. So, we encourage you, if you are an educator or, somebody that has the capacity to put on an event, like you can absolutely do a Bat Week event. There's a ton of resources on there, and it's really about just spreading the bat love, kind of getting people excited about bats. So hopefully you'll come celebrate Bat Week with us this year. And then if you want to join, you can join BCI as a member, which is something that you can do to support our organization, or you can just sign up for our newsletter, just kind of know more about what we're doing. We have a lot of interesting projects all around the world, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on with BCI. So if you want to kind of learn more about bats, hopefully today you've decided you absolutely love bats and you want to kind of learn as much as you can, please sign up for our newsletter and kind of keep informed of what's going on in the world of bats. So with that, that's our contact. And I can't speak for Jessie, but I feel like we're both, if you want to reach out and ask us any more questions, that would be great. And I think we're also happy to take questions here too. And that's our website again, batcon.org. But thank you for listening.
Before we launch into questions, we're just going to do a quick poll. This just helps us to get the numbers that we need to keep these events going, to show that they're useful to our community. So it's just 4 questions on a scale of agree to disagree. So I'll just launch that now, and feel free to enter your answers. As you're doing that, I just want to do a quick plug. UC Environmental Stewards. We work to put these on to continue the learning in our community. And if you found this webinar useful and our other CONES webinars useful, please consider making a small donation to continue supporting these webinars going forward. I just put a link in the chat for our support page. I think the numbers when you initially go in there start like 500, and we don't expect people to give 500 for a brief webinar. But if you were like, hey, I found this useful, I think I'll make a small donation today. It would really mean a lot to us. So thanks for your consideration. Just one more moment, and then I'll end the poll, and then we'll get started on the questions, and I'll go through them pretty rapid fire because we have about 5 questions and just a couple minutes left. Okay, so there we go. Download those. Okay, awesome. So thank you so much for your feedback. I'll start with kind of the broadest questions and then work to the more particular ones. So there was a question just reiterating why it's important to decontaminate caving gear.
Again, this is only if you are a caver and you go into these spaces, but it's really important that you clean your gear from cave to cave so that you're not moving those white nose fungal spores around. And that whitenose-syndrome.org website has the latest decontamination protocol. So if you're in the caving community, definitely go there and check that out. But it's so that we don't move the disease from cave to cave.
Awesome, thank you. Next question. Are there any general patterns in terms of bat migration, or do they vary based on individual species?
Yeah, so we are just kind of scratching the surface with this. It's very difficult to track bats, and the technology is getting better. So if you've heard of a network called the MODIS network, this is where you can put a little tag on a bat that transmits a signal, or a tag on any animal really that's flying around. And then there are stations across the landscape that can pick up that signal and triangulate the location of the animal from that. From this research, we're starting to see that bats are going different directions at different times of year. There does seem to be a pulse in the fall, and another pulse in the spring, but it's not like birds where we see this mass movement south in the fall and north in the spring. And it is definitely species specific. So some bats will just go right into hibernation. They'll find a little, a cave or another spot to hang out for the winter, and others will move around for the winter. So there's a lot of diversity going on. And again, we're really still in the nascent stages of learning what that looks like.
Awesome. Awesome. So another question is, do bats roost in woodpecker holes?
I feel like they
That's
probably would. I mean, yeah. What do you think, Jessie?
That's a good, yeah, I've never
I
thought
would say
about it before, but I wouldn't be surprised if they
probably.
did.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like, if it's a crevice in a tree and it's available, like I'm sure that would be very attractive to certain species of bats.
Awesome. Okay, so the next question is, what's the main resource for learning about current research and accepted natural history information on California bats? For example, with birds, it's eBirds and Birds of the World. Is there something similar to that for bats?
So kind of broadly speaking, the BCI website has a really great bat profiles resource where it will give a little bit of background about the different species found in North America. There's still a lot left to be discovered for just general biology about bats. And we don't have a clearinghouse like eBird for that. We do have the North American Bat Monitoring Program, which is more kind of geared towards research. But yeah, there's not that really ready resource available.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
tough. I would say not to toot our own horn, but their BCI has a quarterly publication called Bats Magazine that you get if you're a member, and like that has a lot of kind of the latest information and like research and kind of things like that in there as well. It's nice.
Awesome. There's a few different questions, and they're kind of all in the range of like specifics about what to do when you find a bat doing X. And I'm gonna kind of combine them all because they might have similar answers. So, one person has a bat that is nesting in their eaves, and they're wondering if there is a time or indication that the bat has left and it would be safe to caulk it. One person is concerned about what to do if they find a bat in their patio umbrella. One person is asking, is there a need to move bats if they are living in the space between the brick outside wall and their house?
Josie,
So
or I mean, go for it. I don't want
yeah. So yeah, I think so generally, and this is going to vary a little bit by species and locations, but in the summer is typically when bats will have where you'll see them and they'll be because they're congregating to form maternity roosts, and they're flying every night, foraging a lot to support their pups. And so if you have bats living in or around your house, we always say for the summer, just leave them alone because they probably have pups in that space. Later in the fall, I would say just keep an eye out, maybe like sweep the droppings away so you can keep monitoring if there's more coming. And once they stop, then it means they've moved on to either their hibernacula or they've, migrated away. So that's probably the best indication if you're wanting to caulk particular areas or do exclusions. You can also wait and do those exclusions at night so that you're sure the animals have left and you're not going to, trap them in place. For the umbrella, I would recommend maybe just leaving it open and giving the bats an opportunity to leave. And with it being open, it might be less of a, attractive space for them to roost during the day. Erin, I don't know if you have
Yeah,
any suggestions.
I've heard yellow bats really like umbrellas, so I'm wondering, I mean, it could very well be that. I think, if generally, good rule of thumb is to leave it alone. If it does seem like the bat is injured or struggling, like again, I would recommend trying to figure out like who your local bat rehabilitator is, because they're going to be like sort of your experts, like your local experts. So again, that website's batworld.org, and there's a find a rescuer map, and just type in your zip code, and there's like a number, or if it's an a nonprofit, it'll tell you to contact. Because I think you just want to make sure you're kind of if it's an injured bat, they might just come get it, honestly. And if it's not, it'll probably kind of just do its own thing. So yeah, I'd say just proceed with caution. Don't freak out. Don't scream. Don't get your dog out there. All good things.
Yeah, so the is pretty specific. So one person was working in a state park and a bat came and landed on their coworker's shoulder and started to crawl up towards his head. Another coworker pulled it off, put it in the bushes, and then it flew back towards them. And they kind of tried to shoo it away again before it flew away. And the person was curious if you have any possible explanations for this behavior. It was a smallish, palm-sized bat with a plump, dark body and light wings. But that, I mean, describes it. Many
Right, like that's a
species of
lot.
bats.
Was it, I wonder, sometimes when they're young and like just learning to fly, sometimes they do very wacky things. Like, I don't know, it could have been that. I don't know, Jessie, what do you think?
I'm wondering if there was like, somebody might have
A
had a
bug on
headlamp
you?
on, and so there were
Yeah, where
insects
there's like
like
a big
near
beetle
you.
on your shoulder.
That's the
Or
only
you've
thing I
been
can think of.
chosen for a quest, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
it's
would
always
think,
hard with the specifics.
yeah, sometimes I think, when the baby bats are learning to fly, they aren't that good at it at first. And so sometimes they kind of do things that you're just like, what? So it could have been something like that. It might have just been a baby bat that was sort of struggling, and you look like a sturdy tree kind of in the space. But it's hard to say for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming. I feel like I'm probably going to watch some vampire movies in the coming week. And now I have so many fun bat facts to
Yay.
help teach all my friends and family about. And I hope that everyone here does as well. So please, everyone, go out into the world and be great stewards of the bat name and help fight for bats and make your yard spaces as bat friendly as possible. And looking forward to a wonderful bat conservation